coming in here, it doesn't seem like that is close.
You know, the question that is raised, and it's a question at this point, is whether or not there is another shooter and whether or not they're concerned about a second party here. We do not know the answer to that question. Obviously, that's a question that we're asking as well, and it is a legitimate one given the police presence that we're seeing on the ground and this helicopter that has, according to Peter's eyewitness report, 2 individuals with guns aimed at the ground, and the order given to the people who are still in those buildings to shelter in place and not to move. We saw the eyewitnesses before talk about a tall, dark-skinned man, about 6 feet tall, bald, who they saw with what they described as a rifle. They then saw him turn and run down the stairs. So we don't know if that's the individual who is barricaded into an area and, according to the reports, injured at this point. A lot of questions.
There are some pictures from a different angle too that are quite stunning when you think of our nation's capital on a Monday morning, and you have SWAT teams and police officers stationed and ready to go on top of this roof with a helicopter flying in the near distance behind it. It is something else that we're watching unfold, and still with very little resolution based on what we can tell. There is a press conference that is pending. When that happens, we don't know, but Steve Santani, our reporter of our Washington Bureau, has positioned himself at that location. There's a bit of a delay on this camera, but I see Steve in the monitor now, so let's go to Steve Santani for what he has now. Steve, hello.
Right, the helicopter hovering overhead just now, the ones that Peter Ducey has been talking about. We're at 3rd and M, a couple of blocks away from where he is, and still all the evidence possible of a very active police scene here. Now, we just had a Metropolitan Police Department spokeswoman come up to the microphones here and say it's a very fluid situation, and they would make somebody available to us shortly, so we'll be hearing something. I don't know if it's a full-blown conference or comments from a police spokesperson, but we will be hearing something from Metropolitan Police here in a matter of minutes or whenever they're able to put somebody up. But they just came and advised us of that. A very active scene. As I said, the helicopter was going over when you first came to me several minutes ago. We had armored vehicles, apparently a SWAT team speeding past here, several convoys of speeding unmarked police cars going past here. It seems to have calmed down just in the last couple of minutes, and we don't know exactly what's happening on this very historic Navy base just behind me, but you can see the buildings, some of the buildings of the Navy base, the Washington Navy Yard, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Navy facility in the United States, founded in 1799. The big white building up there on top of the hill is the Latrobe Gate, the main ceremonial entrance to the base, where this morning at 8:20, of course, a gunman opened fire, and there are conflicting reports, but we believe some people may have been killed. Certainly some have been injured, as we've been seeing some people being evacuated, or at least Peter Ducey reported on that. Here, just a lot of police, a lot of media are watching and waiting, and of course this strikes very close to home for the U.S. Navy, as this is the headquarters for the Naval Sea Systems Command, where they purchase, maintain, and operate all the Navy ships in the U.S. Navy. A huge facility, 3,000 people working here. It's the headquarters for that Naval Sea Systems Command. But worldwide, there are 60,000 people working for it, and it occupies about 1/4 of the entire Navy budget. So a giant organization headquartered here, and as we've mentioned, the Chief of Naval Operations lives here. He apparently is safe now. Not so for maybe a few of the people who work inside that main building there, the headquarters of the Navy Sea Systems Command. So we'll keep you posted on this end. If we do get somebody from the Metropolitan Police Department who may be up here shortly, we'll get back to you.
All right, Steve, that's terrific information. Before we let you go, give us again, how far away are you? And do you see ambulances? Do you see helicopters in the air?
Yeah, we've seen the helicopters buzzing around. I think mostly the activity is a few blocks behind me. You can pan down, Greg, you can pan down the street a little bit. Most of the activity, you can see a sea of police emergency response vehicles down there. There have been ambulances, there are fire trucks, there are buses, there are police cars, just a sea of flashing lights all the way down as far as you can see for 4 blocks. Now, this is a large campus. The Washington Navy Yard is a huge facility, ranging all the way from here on M Street up to the Anacostia River, and from about 4th Street to 7th or 8th Street. So just a large campus, and there has been a lot of activity. Of course, the helicopters still in the air although we're not exactly sure what their mission is now. If, as we hear, the gunman has been contained but not in custody yet, then the situation, while fluid, may not be as lethal as it was earlier.
We're watching the live pictures of the helicopter yet again. We don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, we've seen 2 or 3 what appeared to be gurneys or stretchers that were lowered down and took people away. Clearly they were victims. The one image we had, Martha, 20 minutes ago that flew right over Peter Ducey, that gentleman in a basket, looked to be responding at the time, had his shirt off, it looked like, as he flew overhead.
We're just taking a look at some of what continues to come in here. The Washington Post reporting that the police believe that they have pinned down one shooter between the 3rd and 4th floor. So the wording of that might leave open the possibility that there's a question about whether or not he is in that area. And that may be why we continue to see this beefed up police presence and these shooters who are at the ready, perched on the edge of the open door of this helicopter with their guns trained anywhere toward the ground where they might see activity that they needed to respond to. Also, as a precaution, 6 DC schools are on lockdown right now, reports John Roberts. Abbott and Bowen, Elliott Hine, Tyler, Eastern High School, Brent, J.A. Trojans, and Van Ness Administration Building, all on lockdown right now. 6 D.C. area schools, and boy, I mean, what an incredibly dramatic shot we are seeing as this helicopter continues to swoop over the campus of this property with 2 armed law enforcement officials. These are Parks Police choppers that we've been watching going back and forth here, and just an extraordinary effort on their part of jumping into action when all of this started to unfold. And we wait for news on this shooter, whether or not there is only one shooter, and confirmed numbers of how many people have potentially lost their lives and been wounded here this morning, Bill.
On standby, Jennifer Griffin, Peter Ducey, Steve Centani, KT McFarland in studio, so too is Rod Wheeler, former homicide detective in our nation's capital. Rod, I just want to go back to you because it's been a couple minutes since we have spoken, but you're watching the images here. What do we need to understand? What do you need to tell us about this operation and how it's unfolding?
Well, first of all, let me just tell you that I just got a text message that the reason that the police bill believes that there may be 2 shooters is because they just got information from 2 hospitals, George Washington Hospital and the Washington Hospital Center, where the victims were taken. Here's what's really interesting. There was 2 different types of rounds used against these victims. So anytime we see information like that, meaning that either the one shooter had 2 different types of weapons or maybe there was 2 different shooters. That's why we're hearing somewhat of a little conflicting information that maybe there was 1 shooter, maybe there was 2. The other thing that's important to understand is right now my source is telling me that they do have a person who they believe is the primary shooter contained on the 3rd or 4th floor, excuse me, of building 197. Now the SWAT unit, which is ERT here in DC, they have that entire building surrounded. They are on the floor above the 4th floor, and they are on the floor below the 3rd floor, and they're trying desperately to try to get this individual to put his weapon down. One last thing that's very important. Tyler Elementary School is less than a block away from the Navy Yard. It's actually right up 8th Street. And so what they've done, they locked down Tyler Elementary School at 8:20 this morning, and the U.S. Marines, they're protecting that school right now as I speak. So that's the latest that I have right now, Bill.
We have this word contained, that the shooter's been contained, and how you define it, it's not real clear just yet, but one would assume there was some sort of communication that's happening with that shooter. Rod, thank you. Stand by. KT McFarland, Jennifer Griffin. Back to Peter Ducey, live at the scene as well. Before we get to Peter, though, let's drop back in on the Pentagon and check in with...
We'll go to Jennifer Griffin now, who is standing by and working her sources on this story. Jennifer, what are you learning?
Well, Martha, I can confirm what Rod Wheeler said from Navy officials. They do believe that the one shooter that they had in their sights is somewhere between the 3rd and 4th floor, and they cannot confirm at this moment. They say they have no indication that there's a hostage situation, but he is not yet in custody. So that one shooter is still inside Building 197, has not been placed in custody yet, but there are no reports reports of a hostage situation at this moment in time. We also can report that Admiral Jonathan Greenert, the Chief of Naval Operations, the top Navy officer in the Navy, the person in charge of the Navy who sits on the Joint Chiefs, he was on base at the time of the shooting. He was safely evacuated and is in a safe location at this moment in time, Martha.
All right, Jennifer, thank you. We'll be right back to you in a couple of minutes.
All right, straight away to Peter Ducey. Peter, what do you have now? Peter Ducey, we're live on the air. We were speaking about 10 minutes ago. They had moved your location.
Are you guys coming to me right now? Okay,
yeah.
so
if you can hear me, Peter, go ahead.
Right now, in the last few minutes, is we've seen the helicopters that are coming in and doing some kind of either rescue or resupply to people who are in that victim or rather in that building where the scene is. But now we've got another helicopter. So it would seem that helicopter is really tightly focused on what is happening and the people who are inside that building where the scene is. But now we've got another helicopter that looks just like it. It appears to be a Park Police helicopter that's doing a much bigger, multiple block, kind of a rectangular search. And it would appear that is the helicopter that is keeping an eye on the entire scene. But and while it's not quite as chaotic as it was when we first showed up, I gotta tell you, there are still law enforcement vehicles and officers going in every direction. We're seeing some coming here. They just came right here to close this off. This has been pretty quiet. We've got the helicopters overhead, and there's pretty steady traffic of vehicles. We can see an ambulance right now going down there. That entire intersection is barricaded. Right now we've got an unmarked car going backwards right here with the siren on. And again, so we are at a corner where there are a few reporters. As you can see that guy go, he's heading on down toward wherever their staging area is, a few blocks away. But one road away from where the scene is, there are a few reporters here on this grassy area, and we are right in the middle of it. And something else that I've got to point out, since we are watching some kind of a helicopter assist or a helicopter rescue, the weather is really deteriorating here. It's a little bit hard to see. I mean, my shirt is completely soaked through, and it just only recently started raining. As you can see, just look at this. So this is a helicopter. This is the same kind of helicopter that has been dropping baskets, and now they are just going so low. That is lower than you ever see a helicopter in a big U.S. city. And as it goes, probably only about 100 feet away, maybe 1,000 feet up, we can see another helicopter kind of keeping an eye on things, but it's getting harder to see. The skies are gray. The rain is really falling. Luckily, not too much wind, and we have seen the helicopters are able to stay pretty static, and the baskets really are not moving around, but the weather is deteriorating, and we would hope that does not become a factor in the attempts and the efforts to try to get hurt people out of that building, but we just don't know. And again, things are not pretty here with the weather, and it does not look like it's getting any better anytime soon. In fact, some darker clouds are coming in right now, Bill.
The ceiling is low. Peter Ducey, thank you. Terrific work out there right near the scene. You see his back up against the fence. That's about as close as you can get to this ongoing breaking news story.
Yep. This morning, we started to get reports about 10 minutes before 9 a.m. this morning that there was a shooting at the Washington Naval Yard, historic place, the oldest naval yard in the country. We know that there's a lot of civilians that work here as well, about 3,000 people, a lot of procurement, a lot of naval plans, as KT McFarland has told us this morning, are created from this central place. It is, as I said, a very old institution, a very storied institution, and it is also where Admiral Jonathan Greenert is based and makes his home. We can report to you that he was evacuated and is in a safe place. The numbers of fatalities and wounded is still a question. The DC police reporting at least 10 people were shot. We're waiting for word on how many have been killed, if any, in this situation, and how many wounded there may be. We know that there is a hazmat truck on location there as well right now, and that they stepped up their concerns and started flying a helicopter that had 2 law enforcement officials with guns drawn at areas toward the ground as they tried to make sure that there's not another shooter on this scene. And that's another area of question here this morning still. We heard Rod Wheeler saying that his sources told him that of the wounded that were brought to 2 separate D.C. hospitals, they had different wounds in terms of the bullets that were extracted, and that one of the reasons why they think there could have been potentially a second shooter.
Chad Pergram, our Capitol Hill producer, talks about the enhanced security out of an abundance of caution at the U.S. Capitol building. That's the United States Capitol Police. The USCP also continues to monitor the confirmed active shooter incident confined to the Navy Yard. That's what Chad's reporting as well. There is no known threat to the Capitol complex, which is about 1.5 to 2 miles up that red line you see in the bottom right-hand corner to the north and west. Steve Centani is camped out where a press conference will begin any moment now. Want to get back to Steve for what he's gathering there. Steve, hello.
Yeah, the Metropolitan Police Department will be speaking here in just a matter of minutes. They came out and said they'll put somebody up and give us whatever information they can, but right now it is a fluid situation. So that's the latest we're getting from them. At the same time, I talked to one of the people who was in the building, building 197, at the time the gunman opened fire. She said she was in the lobby, and it's a big wide open atrium that stretches from the lobby all the way up to the upper floors. So she could hear the gunshots echoing through the atrium of that large building where 3,000 people work, and she knew immediately there was something wrong, that it was gunfire, and she started running out, and she encountered a security guard with her gun drawn, and the security officer said, "Get out of the building, get out as quickly as you can, get to safety. It's not safe to be here." And then after that, there was a shelter-in-place order issued for the remaining people in the building to stay put, stay where they were. But at least some of the people initially in the lobby who were able to get out quickly at the beginning of this emergency did run for their lives after they heard those gunshots and they saw security officers running around with their guns drawn. Just got that from one of the workers in the office building that came under attack today from that man with a gun about 8:20 this morning at the Washington Navy Yard. Back to you.
Thank you, Steve. Terrific work there. Steve Centani is waiting for the press conference to begin. It could happen at any moment, and when it does, we will certainly have that live for you at home or at work or online, or wherever you're watching us today.
We heard 2 witnesses who came out of the building and described the shooter. They said they had seen him, that he had what they described as a long gun. They said that he was a black man, about 6 feet tall, bald, dark clothing. They did not describe him as wearing military clothing, at least not according to their understanding of what they saw on scene there. So that remains one of the big questions here today as we watch all of this unfold. But a frightening morning, and a tragic morning at the Washington Naval Yard as people filed into work. 3,000 people work at this facility and arrived generally between 6 and 9 in the morning, and they began to hear those shots fired, potentially from an AR-15 or perhaps a military M16 rifle is the conjecture at this point based on what we know. And the people being brought, as we've seen, rescued on these choppers, unbelievably intricate work on the part of these pilots this morning as we watch them hover over these buildings and bring several individuals to safety at nearby hospitals.
You talk about the 3,000 people reporting for duty for work in the morning on a Monday, getting ready to start another work week, and this is clearly not what you expect. Many of these people live and work in the Washington, D.C. area. Perhaps they were talking about football over the weekend, or the Washington Redskins, the team that is so beloved in that city that has had such a poor performance so far, and then this breaks the morning to start the week, and we're waiting to find out fatalities. We're waiting to get confirmation on the wounded, and we're also waiting to see whether or not that helicopter makes another assault on top of that building and takes another person away. It's been a remarkable morning to watch the developments and to see the way the police have coordinated with one another to evacuate the wounded, if at all possible, and hopefully, based on the reports we have, can find that shooter to a room on the 3rd or 4th floor and take him into custody.
We are learning that there will be a Navy Yard press conference, and that will happen